So I want to start this talk off with a question. Can fashion save lives? Well, the typical answer to that question at first is no. But yeah, I mean, so to some people it sounds pretty ridiculous, right? The idea of fashion saving lives. I mean, sure, intentional design or safety in clothing. Where do we see this in our world? Well, we know it exists in firefighter and army uniforms, construction attire, even astronaut suits are considered as articles of clothing, right? Now, that's something probably no one in this room has ever seen or felt, but we all know that there's a lot of attention to detail there, right? You got the gloves that latch into the arms, big helmet that comes on, all these very important gadgets. Now, that's one piece of clothing where if anything is messed up, it can become life-threatening. Same goes for police uniforms. We've all seen those. Everything is very intentional with police uniforms, or uniforms in general, really. It's all been very thought through. Like, for example, how quickly you can access your gun and where in the body is the best place for it to be, or how you can talk to your buddy on the radio. Everything has been very much calculated. Intentional design in clothing basically ends there, only applying to these high-risk jobs. It sometimes pervades into the consumer market, and there are some new fashion brands that are really interested in how we interact with our clothing. But humanitarian application for intentionally designed clothing is ultimately non-existent. We see homeless on the streets daily in pants not meant for sleeping on city sidewalks. We see refugees fleeing in branded t-shirts and jeans, which of course makes sense because if we all had to get up and leave right now, we'd be stuck in whatever clothes we decided to throw on this morning. And I gotta say, I would regret my shoe choice. But even the donated clothes are just more of the same. Just trend-focused clothing other people don't want hanging up in their closets anymore. And unfortunately, when it comes to disaster relief, stylish but ultimately useless clothes are the vast majority of items that are donated. And while there always seems to be a steady stream of donations, the clothes aren't always meeting the need and are often causing a myriad of other issues within crisis. For example, noisy or vibrant clothing bringing attention to people who are trying to flee undetected, or dark or unrecognizable clothing that are creating danger when traveling on unlit roads or across water, water-absorbing clothing that adds weight and discomfort, clothing that is not responsive to climate, resulting in illness, not to mention just the overall ease and functionality of the garments. For example, if you're traveling with something important, you'd want to keep it close to you at all times. If you're traveling with a lot, you'd like to have several pockets to put things in so you can evenly distribute the weight. If it rains, you want your clothes to be able to dry quickly, or better yet, to keep you dry while you're wearing them. When I visited refugee camps in Greece, I watched as volunteers passed out spring jackets for winter because that was all they had. I saw children running around in the cold of November in adult-sized flip-flops, occasionally taking them off so they can play jump rope without tripping. Mismatched shoes in bins at warehouses where there was surprisingly even an inventory of Halloween costumes. Clothing is being given out in the wrong sizes, for the wrong seasons, for the wrong purposes, with visible wears and stains. What is needed is clothing that goes back to the original purpose of clothing, a sort of clothing for crisis, if you will, where form should follow function. Design should be user-centered and solution-based, made to solve problems, not create more. Clothing should be sizeless, able to fit most body types, and seasonless, able to adapt to any environment. And most importantly, clothing should not relate to the cause of death for anyone. It's funny how quickly we forget that clothing is one of the key things that we need for survival in our expanded environments, and yet the fashion industry doesn't feel the compulsion to provide for those who still rely on it for survival. So then why isn't fashion considered as a way to provide relief for global issues? I'm a solution-based fashion designer, which means that I understand the true value our clothing can provide. I founded the humanitarian outerwear brand ADIFF that uses intentional design to assist displaced persons. We are all about using the fashion industry to create aid and awareness around global displacement. Now, this is inherently controversial because fashion, as we know it, doesn't really deal in the realm of politics or global issues, right? No. Fashion, as we know it, is useless. When I say the word fashion, what comes to mind? Let's see. Runways, luxury, models, red carpets, and Fifth Avenue. Something frivolous, superficial, unimportant, and expensive. Not to mention wasteful. After all, fashion is the second most polluting industry in the world, just behind oil. It's also the only industry that can tell you not to wear that jacket that is in perfectly good condition that's hanging up in the back of your closet because it is out of fashion. Fashion has widely been considered as detached from global concerns or maybe even above them. Most runway shows or designers don't call our society or our practices into question. They don't deal with proposals or solutions to combat the issues of our real world. They mostly discuss kind of ridiculous abstract concepts like clouds, or in this case, traveling first class at an airport. And if I'm being quite honest about this, I couldn't give a shit about any of this. It's a waste of time. Thanks. It's a waste of time, money, resources, and space, and it's really just highlighting the economic gaps between those who have the money to purchase these clothes and those who don't. So I'm not here today to convince you guys that fashion isn't all of these things. It is. But it doesn't have to be. Obviously, this sense of the industry can't save lives, but it's not my focus. I believe that purposefully designed clothing can offer solutions and deliver aid, that fashion can be used to create awareness and solidarity, and that it truly should be considered as an asset. Which brings us back to that first question. Can fashion save lives? Absolutely. I bet you guys wouldn't guess that this tent over here, this is my jacket for this evening. This jacket is one of 7 that I designed in reaction to the refugee crisis. The collection responds to the need for shelter, for sleep, relocation, need to be seen one second and hide the next, the need to travel safely on water, the risks of traveling with young children, and the overall need for warm, durable clothing. Using intentional design to reduce risk, I created a series of jackets that can transform into tents, a sleeping bag, or a backpack, as well as others designed to carry children for flotation and invisibility. Everything is all gender, one size, weatherproof, and prepared to be worn in numerous environments. So I originally launched this project with the sole intention to just donate these garments. But then I was surprised to learn that average people were interested in purchasing them and using them for outdoor recreation. And so then we transitioned from a project to a brand. We operate by selling our jackets within the outdoor fashion industry to consumers, and for every jacket purchased, we then donate one to displaced persons worldwide. Our mission is to really create a sustainable model for impact that allows us to consistently donate product without having to rely on government or nonprofit grants. So we've tested these jackets at refugee camps in Greece and received overwhelmingly positive feedback. Little kids were running from tent to tent telling their friends to come out and try on these super cool jackets. But at every camp we visited, it became all the more obvious just how needed these garments were. But in addition to meeting the functional need, it was also interesting to see what a surprising effect they had on the morale of everyone at the camp. Part of the reason why I think it was such a success was because it allowed these people to escape through their current situation through something so light as fashion. It's interesting how this lightness and frivolity that I literally just criticized like 5 minutes ago could actually be used as a positive when used for good. Which brings me to my final point. Clothing can save lives in other ways, not just with transformable jackets. One key thing about clothing is that it's something that we all interact with every day. Let's just have everyone take a second and look around right now and see if there's anyone here who's not wearing any clothes. Right? You wouldn't be allowed in, would you? Clothing and fashion are built into our society. They may be able to help in daily issues and maybe even save lives in dire circumstances, but it's not capable of creating immigration reform or redirecting money towards affordable housing. Only the people can do that. If we're able to successfully hack the fashion system and use it as a vehicle for change, then fashion can play a much larger role in global issues as a whole. We envision fashion as a movement, as an opportunity to get people to pay attention to what's really important through a medium that hasn't been oversaturated with messaging. By opening up our products to consumers, we're looking to create awareness through that medium, through that platform. Because you're a lot less likely to forget about the needs of refugees and homeless if you have a jacket hanging up in your closet every day that is a constant reminder. And when you wear that out in the world, you're wearing that story and you're projecting it and you're telling that to other people and creating awareness through that medium. Because awareness and understanding are truly our greatest weapons for change. You can shut off the news, turn off the radio, or close your eyes as you walk past newsstands, but it's really hard to avoid clothing. What you wear sends a message. So really think about what you want that message to be. Do you want your clothes to be produced ethically, sustainably? Do you want them to bring people together or tear them apart? Do they have a story? What does that say? We need to integrate fashion with what's actually going on in the world and hold the industry accountable. All of us need to act intentionally with what we wear, why we wear it, and what we hope for it to accomplish. And it starts here, it starts right now, it starts with you guys. Because clothing is ultimately a tool, and fashion is just what we make of it. So now, what about this tent, right? I'm sure you guys are super curious. I always joke that I'm gonna take off my shoes when I do this demonstration, and I think I actually will today, because the stage is pretty narrow, so excuse me for a second. So, first step in turning this into a jacket is to take out the poles, which are made from a very durable fiberglass. It's a good thing there's no one in the front row. Otherwise, this would have been like the scene from Mean Girls where Gretchen kicks the boombox in her boyfriend's face. I'm showing too much of my personality right now, aren't I? So taking out these poles from this reflective channel, which is for high visibility. Now this tent can actually fit one person very comfortably, two people kind of comfortably, but it's designed to accommodate at least one person because most refugees are not traveling alone. And my trick is always to push the poles, not pull the poles. There, that's the hardest part. So these can be collapsed. Next step, taking off this base. Waterproof base. All of our fabrics, mostly polyester synthetics that are waterproof and made from recycled materials. We're actually going to be producing this jacket made from recycled water bottles, so that's going to be really exciting. This is also the most boring part. So right now what I'm going to do is roll up this base, which becomes a bag that can carry the poles as well as anything else that's super important that you want to keep safe. I'm going to do this kind of messily since time is of the essence. And we have a simple loop closure here that keeps everything nice and tight. I promise it's going to get way more interesting after this. And this is a super strong nylon webbing, which actually in order to fold it, you have to bite it. So I know this jacket very well. And then you can tie it in a loop here, and it can be crossbody bag or anything. All right, next step. Center front seam of the jacket. And then what would a jacket be if it didn't have any sleeves? So let's get these out. Where is this other sleeve? There we go. This uses about 7 or 8 yards of fabric. So typically when you make a jacket, it only uses about 2 yards. This one is pretty big. All right, here we go. Thank you guys. Thanks.
Wow.
I should put my shoes back on now, shouldn't
That's
I?
awesome. You can leave them off. It's fine.
No, it's okay. It looks better for the jacket. You can tell I work in fashion right now.
We're kind of chairless. Are you okay not sitting down?
Oh, yeah, we can move the chairs out, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Thanks.
While we set that up, could you tell us a little bit about your let's take the
Let me
light.
just get out of the way.
A little bit about your research in Greece? Where did you go and who did you talk to?
Yeah, so I was there for about 2 weeks. I was traveling around refugee camps both in Athens and to Lesbos. So actually, I slept in this jacket and the sleeping bag jacket on the 13-hour boat ride to Lesbos. So we visited about 5 or 6 camps and interacted with everyone there.
I absolutely love the way you talk about the details. Simply to hear a garment that turns into a tent, a garment that turns into a sleeping bag, a garment that can help you carry a child. It's almost like a litany that reminds us every time we say it what's actually happening. Mm-hmm. and that this is real. It's not just a thing to buy. What's harder, designing a jacket that turns into a tent or designing a tent that turns into a jacket?
Oh, God. Well, actually, so I did some research on like transformable jackets before, and I noticed there were a lot of jackets that turn into tents, but not many tents that turn into jackets. Actually, not any tents that turn into jackets. And so that's actually where I kind of came from, was, you know, looking at these sort of tent jackets that were mostly just kind of like little cocoons with a little triangle over your forehead. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense if you're a single person, but when you're traveling with family or traveling with multiple people, you want to be able to keep as many people in shelter as possible. So I kind of looked at this a different way and bought a tent and then kind of reverse engineered to see how it could become a jacket.
Did you have experience in outdoor apparel before
Oh my
this?
God, no.
Well,
I've actually only gone camping once in my life. That's my like really bad secret. But we're moving to LA next week, and we will be camping in our tent jackets the entire way, road trip for like a week. So it's gonna smell really nice in that truck. But
Sounds like a catalytic demo if I ever heard one.
yes, right. So yeah, no, my experience in outdoor fashion. There was no experience. I had this kind of couture and tailoring background, which of course carries over, especially with all the details and the meticulous stitch qualities. But yeah, so this was very, very new to me when I started.
Talk a little bit more about the materials you chose.
So this jacket actually, I'm not sure if you guys ever watched Project Runway or like know Mood Fabrics, but when I was actually creating the jacket, it was, or all of the collection, I had to go there because we needed materials basically instantly to do the project. And they knew me pretty well over at Mood because I would just come with like water bottles of stuff and pour it on all the fabric to see what was waterproof. So yeah, but as we move forward into production, we're looking to source pretty much exclusively sustainable materials and whatever we can. With our high-vis reflectives, there actually isn't that much in terms of like sustainability going on that front, and hopefully we can kind of lead the way in that kind of new technology with materials. But
Could you just unpack the definition for that a little bit? Because I mean,
Yeah.
waterproof fabrics, it gets pretty.
well, yeah, like
It's
anytime
pretty
you
weird
add a
pretty
waterproof
fast.
coating to anything, it makes it less like biodegradable, which is a very complex thing. So having sustainable materials, it's more, I guess, in this sense right now, it's more about using recycled plastics or like just recycled materials in general in order to do that. So with what we're doing now for our tent jacket, we are using like recycled water bottles for our production grade jacket. So probably going to be ordering like, I don't even know, 8,000 yards of this. But just because, you know, there are like climate refugees are very real, and climate change is obviously a major factor within fashion and within the world and everything. So we need to be very cognizant of our global footprint and want to be very intentional with what we choose and how it impacts our planet.
I don't know that the market. Maybe this question isn't as valid with the level of market penetration you have right now. But do you ever worry that designing and distributing a garment of this type might become, you could single out its wearers?
You mean like very like niche, or you mean just like the idea of this kind of solidarity could single out the wearers, or?
When most Americans see a person in an orange jumpsuit, they jump to A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z.
I would see this as definitely something that could bring people together more than single them out. So, I mean, obviously, there are regions of the U.S. where, you know, discussing immigration reform and refugees is a very controversial topic. But, you know, since we're going to be donating these jackets to refugees and homeless in the U.S. and worldwide, I definitely think that, you know, if you're walking down the street of LA and you see someone who's homeless wearing this jacket and you are also wearing like the comparable version of this jacket, that's an instant connection between you two. And it's basically kind of like, I support you and I'm here for you. And I think that even if like that experience doesn't happen, even if you're just wearing this as, you know, a random person walking anywhere, it's more about discussing this awareness and the solidarity that you have with these people. And I wouldn't see it as singling out, but more of I stand with this issue and projecting your values and your views.
Angela Luna, thank you so much.
Thank you.